Hey guys, so thanks for being here. Number one. Number two, I just want to do a couple disclaimers. This will contain adult language and like sexual scenarios, so if you're sensitive to those, um you might want to get out of here real quick. A second, this is going to be about the Bridgerton series. So if you don't want any spoilers for like the show, I'm not sure exactly what the show's going to show compared to what the book is, but this is based off the book, but it may contain spoilers since the show is also based off the book. So now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into our makeup. So we start the book off basically kind of where we left the first season, right? So Anthony is going to be looking for a wife, right? But he's very much like firm on that he doesn't want like love to be involved. He just wants it to be like a business arrangement. So that's kind of like where he's at with it. So the main characters are a family called the Sheffields, right? And so there's two daughters. There's one named Edwina and there's one named Kate, and then their mother, her name is Mary. Now these girls are from the country, so they're not like from society. They're part of society, but not like, the town, in London. They're from the countryside. So they don't really know anybody. But besides that, Edwina has kind of been named the comparable of the season. So she has a lot of suitors. She is 17 years old, and her sister Kate is 21 years old. Kate is a little bit older, but because they're from the country and they don't have as much money, they could really only afford to come for one season and try to, both girls get married off in the same season, right? Because they financially couldn't afford to do it any other way. So their plan was to come for a season when Edwina was old enough to marry, which would leave Kate a little outside of marrying age, but it just fit better since they couldn't afford to only come when Kate was of marrying age, right? Okay. So, as the incomparable Edwina catches the eye of Anthony, and he's like, this is great. He doesn't like have like lovey-dovey feelings for her, so like it's perfect for him. However, Kate is not a fan of Anthony. And as Edwina's older sister, Edwina really wants her sister to kind of give her blessing, and Kate is like a hard no on Anthony because he's a rake, he has a bad reputation, and she just doesn't think that, they're a good match. So, Anthony and Edwina are like dancing at like a ball, and all of a sudden here comes Colin to come talk to Kate. And so Kate mentions that she thinks his brother is a rake, and she's not happy that they're dancing together. And Colin kind of finds it like amusing. He's very playful and fun. We know that from the first season. And so he kind of sees an opportunity to kind of mess with his brother. So he takes it upon himself to kind of get it in his brother's head that Kate, couldn't, say enough about him, and he kind of makes it seem like Kate likes Anthony and that Anthony should woo her and get her blessing real quick. But this is not the case. It's a trick Colin plays on Anthony. And so this becomes like really clear when Colin brings Anthony over to Kate, and they end up dancing together. And Kate like steps on his toes a couple times, and I'm not sure if it's on accident because she's kind of more clumsy, not as graceful as her sister. So it very well could have been an accident, but she just played it off as intentional. So it becomes very clear that she does not like Anthony, but they kind of have like this game of wits going on where they're kind of taking digs like on each other in almost a flirtatious way, but both of them are steadfast in that they do not like each other. So the next day after this first little ball that they're at, Anthony shows up at the Sheffield house, right? To bring flowers to Edwina. However, she's not there, but Kate is. So, they get to talking, and he meets Kate's dog, and this whole time Edwina is out with Nigel Berberich, right? So Mary, Kate's mother, is like, why don't you guys go find your sister and walk the dog? So they go on a walk, and this is really the first time that Anthony like kind of starts looking at Kate like a little bit differently, and like noticing her for her own like beauty, not like next to her sister, you know what I mean? Because her sister kind of overshadows her, in like that department, but she's still really, really pretty. Just when she's standing next to her sister, people are more drawn to her sister. So this is like the first time that he really recognizes that she's like very pretty on her own, right? Without, you know what I mean? Like without being compared to her sister, like, she could hold her own in that department, right? So so they go and they take this dog for a walk. Well, while they're walking the dog gets off the leash and is running through the park, like the park where everybody is, like, all of society. They go to the park and they promenade or whatever. And so the dog gets loose and he starts running, and they're like chasing after him, and everybody's like, what's going on, and watching what's happening. And so the dog ends up running and knocking Edwina into the pond. So Anthony obviously runs to her side and like helps pull her out of the pond. And then he's like kind of mad at Kate because like she didn't like control the dog, right? And so Anthony takes Edwina home, and then Nigel Berberich takes Kate home, and then Edwina ends up getting a cold from being pushed into the water, right? So they're kind of like not in, like, they're not going to the parties and stuff for like a couple days, right? While she's recovering. Well, then Mary, the mother of Kate and Edwina, stepmother to Kate, mother to Edwina, accepts an invitation from Violet Bridgerton to go to like this musical thing at their house. So they go, and it's like an event, and so they go to this event, and Anthony is there. So the night that Edwina had gotten pushed into the water, right, that night, he had like a dream about Kate, like a sexual dream, right? Okay. And he woke up and like, he was, he had a boner. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. He had a boner. And he had like this nasty little dream about her. And so he was like still like thinking about this like when she arrived, and he was like, I gotta like avoid her. And Kate was also like, man, I gotta avoid him. And so they're both trying to avoid each other this whole night. And so this musical event, the soprano girl, right, that Anthony was having like an affair with, Maria, I believe her name is, she was singing at this event. And so after the event, he was talking with her, and they ended up like going back into his office. And I should back up. Okay. So he's talking to, I messed it up. He's talking to Maria in case, like, I gotta get out of here. And because she doesn't like want to like see it, because he's like kissing on her neck and stuff, and she's like, oh, you know. And Maria's neck, by the way. Yeah, so she's like, ew, I'm going into the hallway. So she goes into the hallway, and then she can hear that he's coming with that chick. You can hear them talking. So she like runs and she hides in like the first door she sees. And she gets behind the door. And then she's like looking around, and she realizes that it's a study. It's Anthony's study. And so she's like, dang it. And then worst case scenario happens, and Anthony ends up coming into the office with Maria. So when Kate had heard the door jiggling, like, them outside the door, she was like, oh, shoot, like, I gotta go run and hide. So she ran and she hid up under the desk, right? So she hides up under the desk, and then Anthony comes in with the soprano girl, and he's like talking to her, and Kate's like, she like can't do anything. She's like just stuck there, just hoping that like they go away and she can just like carry on and like sneak back out. And so they're talking, and Anthony's telling her like how he still plans to have her as a mistress after he gets married, and how he doesn't plan on like marrying for love, and it'll just be like a business arrangement. And he's telling all this to Maria, but Kate is like listening. So she's like, oh no, I'm not letting my sister marry this dude. He's already talking, about having affairs, and like, you know what I mean? Like, she's like, this is not for my sister, And so, Anthony asked Maria if she would like a drink, right? And so Maria's like, yeah, give me a drink. Well, the drink, like, little, like, the liquor tray, is over by the windowsill, which is on the other side of the desk. So, Kate, like, looks over there, and she's like, oh my God, he's gonna be able to see me. It's like a clear line of sight to see her hiding under the desk, which he does. So he sees her hiding under the desk, and he like goes over, and he like steps on like her fingers or something, and like she's trying to be really quiet because she doesn't want the other person to know, and he's not saying anything, like he's just like kind of messing with her, and like kicking her, I'm sure not hard, but kind of torturing her a little bit. And so then he asks Maria, like, hey, can we just cut it short? And, I got some things I got to do. And she's like, yeah, sure. So he goes and he walks Maria out, and then he locks the door. So, like, he's in the office with her now alone with the door locked. Ooh. And then so she comes out. Okay, it gets good. I'm sorry. I'm like stretchy. Okay, so, so now she comes out from under the desk, obviously she got caught, and he's like, what are you doing in here? And he's like, in his mind, he's like gonna like kind of intimidate her, like, teach her a lesson, but it doesn't end up working out that way, because he like ends up like getting like really close to her and stuff, and like then he ends up kissing her and grabbing her butt. So he kisses her, and he grabs her butt. It's written much more beautifully than that. I'm going to have to put in an excerpt. An excerpt from chapter 7. He was going to stop right there and leave her bothered and breathless. But when there was barely an inch between them, the pole became too strong. Her scent was too beguiling, and the sound of her breath too arousing. The prickles of desire he had meant to strike within her suddenly ignited within him, sending a warm claw of need to the very tips of his toes, and I'm sure some other tips as well. And the fingers he had been trailing along her cheeks just to torture her, he told himself, suddenly became a hand that cupped the back of her head as his lips took her in an explosion of anger and desire. She gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage of her parted lips by sliding his tongue between them. She was stiff in his arms, but it seemed more to do with surprise than anything else, and so Anthony pressed his suit further by allowing one of his hands to slide down her back and cup the gentle curve of her derriere. Okay, so that happened. He kissed her, and he grabs her butt, and then she runs. Like, she, like, kind of gets away, you know what I mean? And, like, runs behind a chair, and then she's, like, behind the chair, and she's, like, you know, like, you can't get me, you know? Like that. And, and so anyways, they're like, you know, she's like, you're never going to marry my sister. And he's like, oh no, I still plan to marry your sister. And she's like, but like, you just kissed me. I just heard your conversation. And he's like, you know, I don't care. I'm still going to do it. And, she's like, no, that's never going to happen. So this whole scenario, you know, finishes. Oh, he had a boner too. Sorry. He had a boner. He was firm with desire. And and she felt it. Okay. So so then after this happens, what happens next? I can't get too carried away. I wrote notes, okay, so that I won't forget where I'm at. So let me just go to my handy dandy notebook here. Okay. Oh yeah, he totally had a boner. Okay. It says right here, boner. And so the next event that they see each other at is like, you know, a couple days later, and this is at the country manor of like the Bridgertons, and it's like a kind of like a weekend soiree type event, like a house party kind of, you know, but like classy. Just picture a bunch of like frat guys. It's like, you know, a weekend, like, getaway from, like, the city and everything like that. So, you know, and they're gonna have, like, dinner party, and, you know, it's kind of more risque and a little bit more, like, let loose than, you know, parties held, like, you know, in London, right? Okay, so they're at the country thing, and Anthony is, like, still kind of like, oh, this chick, I hate her, but, like, also, like, I kind of want her at the same time, like, very, like, love-hate, like, lusty, you know. So, anywho, okay, just ignore that. So, he wants to, like, you know, get it on with her, but obviously he can't. She's, like, a proper lady, and, you know, he just can't stand her, and she can't stand him, but, like, also, he can stand her if it's in the bedroom. Okay, so, they're at they pull up to the, you know, the country house, and they get out, and it's like a beautiful little house, you know. Well, I shouldn't say little, it's like 50 rooms or something, I think it said. So it's like a big house, but it's like not like, it's like very, like, you know, like, it feels like very, like, warm, you know. It's not like, you know, just like a castle, you know, it's very, like, homey, right? So they get out, and they go in, and they greet you know, Violet Bridgerton, and, you know, Kate's talking to her, and she's like, I love the house, I love it, and then I want to go look at the gardens, and blah blah blah. And then Violet's like, yeah, go check out the gardens. And then Anthony's little nosy butt is coming over afterwards to, like, talk to his mom and, like, kind of try to see what they said, you know, like, what they say, you know, but more slick, you know. So he goes over to talk to his mom, and then they talk, and then he's like, I think I'm gonna go for a walk to clear the, you know, my head or whatever. And she's like, well, why don't you go for a walk in the garden? And so he's like, yeah, great idea. Little did he know that Kate was there, and they ended up running into each other. And so he was kind of like wanting to say sorry to her about like everything that had happened at the music event thingy. And so he took the opportunity of running into her to like tell her like he's sorry or whatever. She's like, well, that's fine, but I still don't want you marrying my sister, and it's gonna be like really awkward that like you kissed me and like now you're my brother, you know. And he was like, yeah, okay, I can see that. So like maybe I don't marry her, you know. And then for the first time, I think he kind of contemplated, like he thought about like, you know, what if I married Kate, you know. But then he like kind of stopped himself from thinking that. And then his brother Colin, which Kate had already met, came up and like greeted them. And he was telling Anthony how Daphne was coming and they were going to play a game of Pall Mall. Right, it's a yard game. So they're going to play. But they don't like play by normal like rules. Like their whole objective to the game is to like be very unsportsmanlike and like kind of cheat and like, you know, try to knock other players out and like just, you know, be like as, you know, lying and cheating and just kind of bad sportsmanship all around, you know. So Kate kind of like accidentally like invites herself without like really realizing it, you know. Well, I mean, I guess she did kind of realize it afterwards, but she kind of like invited herself, right? And then Anthony kind of took the opportunity to like take advantage of that and be like, yeah, you should totally come. And then I'm going to go get your sister and she can come play too to even out the numbers since we have one more player. And there really wasn't anything Kate could like think to say in that moment, you know? So she was just like, okay, like just hurry up and go get her. And so they go and they play. And Kate ends up winning and totally screwing Anthony's game up. And like he hit her ball first and like, you know, kicked her out of play. The like, you know, she had to like catch up, like she was just catching up because her ball was so far out of like the playing field that like, you know, the entire game she was just trying to get back to like the other players. And then Colin kind of took an opportunity to whack Anthony's ball out of play over by where Kate was. And then it was Kate's turn. And she was like, well, he kind of like screwed me over. So like now I'm going to return the favor. And so she knocked his ball all the way into the lake. And they kind of declared her the winner at that point because they just really wanted to make sure Anthony wasn't going to win. So she had like kind of won the game, right? So I need to put this back on. Okay, hold on. So she kind of won the game, right? And they were all, you know, happy and stuff, right? Well, then on the way back, her and Anthony were like the last two to finish what they were doing and like cleaning up the field and all that kind of stuff. So they were like walking back together. And, you know, at this point, she's kind of like started to like soften. She's kind of sort of started to soften like how she feels about Anthony, you know, like she doesn't think he's like a terrible person anymore like she used to think. And so she like kind of tells him this and he's like, okay, well, you know, that's cool, but I still like want to marry your sister, you know, whatever. And she's like, you know, I really am not comfortable with it, but whatever. So anywho, that night there ends up being this thunderstorm. Well, she has this like fear of thunderstorms, right? She has like kind of like anxiety attack, PTSD type, you know, reaction to thunderstorms. So this thunderstorm happens, and she just happens to be like in the library because she couldn't sleep, so she can go get a book. And this storm happens while she's in there. And so now she's like kind of like trapped in there, and she's like kind of paralyzed with fear, and she's like hiding under, a table. And Anthony just happens to be awake as well. And he's like leaving his office, and he sees the light on. So he like goes to investigate and like see why there's just a candle burning in the library. And he ends up finding Kate there. And so he's like comforting her and like trying to get her to calm down and like all this kind of stuff. And so eventually she does, and they go to bed. And Kate kind of is like, well, I mean, that was real sweet of him. And she kind of feels like, well, maybe he would make a good husband. Like, obviously, he's caring enough to care about me, like somebody he hates, blah, blah, blah. So, she decides that she's going to, take away. She's going to, like, give them the blessing. She's not going to, like, stand in the way anymore. She's gonna, take, like, you know what I mean. She's gonna like give them their blessing to be married. So the next day she decides that she's gonna tell Anthony this. So they're in the garden, and she tells this to Anthony, and he's like, okay, cool, But then out of nowhere comes a bee. Damn bee every time. And Anthony is terrified about bees because his father died of a bee sting, and like, he's just terrified. He just thinks like, it's the end of the world, and he like totally freaks out like bee, And so the bee is flying around Kate, and Anthony like grabs her hand, and he's like, has her by her wrist or whatever, and he's like trying to like pull her, and she's like, what are you doing? It's just like a bee, like it's not a big deal. And he's like, it's gonna kill you. He's like, it's gonna kill you, and so in this like struggle back and forth, the bee ends up stinging her, and he like completely has a meltdown, and he like has this handkerchief out, and he's trying to like stung her on her like cleavage, I think. And he's like trying to dab to get the venom out and like the stinger or whatever. And then he's like, it's not working. And then he just full on like starts sucking on. He just starts sucking on it. Okay, like to suck the venom out. But like really, it just looks like he's sucking on her tit, right? So this happens, right? And then they end up getting caught in this position. So Lady Bridgerton, Lady Sheffield, right? Something like that. And then Lady Featherington all walk out into the garden, and he's like sitting there sucking on her titty. Okay. So they caught, and it's like a whole scene. Anthony, what are you doing? Stop sucking on her titty. And he's like, she got stung by a bee, and oh my god. And so his mom kind of understands, like, so she's showing her, she's like, look, it's a bee sting, like, don't freak out, and but Miss Featherington is like, y'all gotta get married. You was sucking on her dang titty. Okay, it said boobie in the book. It said boobie. It did. I thought that was funny. Okay, so oh my god, I'm so mature. Okay. I really hope they keep that in the series, because that's gonna be hilarious if they do. Okay, so and he's like, no, I'm not gonna marry her like over a bee sting. And she's like, hey, what's a bee sting? And she's showing him, and But then in the end, Anthony like kind of weighs the decision and stuff like that. Because like at first they were like, no, like first of all, Miss Feathering is the only one who like would even say anything because like, obviously, Violet Bridgerton doesn't want to like shame her son, and Kate's mom doesn't want to shame their family. Like the only person that doesn't have like, an investment in like the situation is Miss Featherington. But then Miss Featherington's like, like, we're in, like, a garden. Like, there's, like, windows everywhere. Like, anybody could have seen you. And so they think about it. And then Anthony's like, yeah, okay, like, let's just do it. Let's just get married. Whatever. And so that's that. So then after the bee incident... okay, so after the bee incident... Kate and Anthony run off to like the little gazebo, I guess, to talk about their engagement or whatever. And Kate's like, we don't have to do this, like it was just like a bee, and Anthony's like, no, we're gonna do it, like, we already have like a friendship kinda, and like, it'll be fine. Like, he, like, really wanted to, like, bang her, like, honestly. And so, like, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna get my chance to, like, get in that, And so he was, like, kind of like, yeah, no, we're gonna do it. And, like, so they go to the gazebo. And, Anthony, like, kind of... They make out. They make out. And I think he had a boner. Let me look at my notes. Let's see. Oh yeah, he definitely had a boner. Okay, they went to the gazebo, they made out. He definitely had a boner. And I think he was like, on her boobies. Kate, like, she kind of, her self-esteem has always been like kind of low because her sister's always been like revered as like really beautiful and stuff, and she's always been compared to her sister, and like so she like always like feels less than, you know what I mean? So she doesn't believe that like people are going to just accept, that they're gonna get married. She really feels like people are gonna be like, well, what happened, and it was right for her to feel that way because that's exactly what people were saying, like, oh my god, what happened between them, blah 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 blah. And that's okay though. That's neither here nor there. So, they're getting ready for the wedding and everything, and Anthony comes over, and he just wants to like get one thing straight with her, that like, hey, they're marrying, like, they're gonna be like friends and stuff like that, but she shouldn't like expect him to like ever love her. But he does love her. He's just being like really weird, like commitment like issues, okay? And that she shouldn't like expect for him to like ever like be in love with her, even though he already is, but like he's just denying himself that realization. But anyways, and she doesn't know that he's denying himself, but so she's like, well, this is awkward. And yeah. Oh, they make out again, and he has another boner. Okay, so they get married, right? And they're going to like the bachelor pad or whatever. And she's like, hey, like on the way, she's like, hey, maybe we should like wait before like, like we consummate the marriage, because she's like nervous or whatever. And he's like, huh? Like, no. He's just, she's like, he's like, why? And she's like, I just need time to get ready, and he's like, what are you gonna do to get ready? And she's like, I don't know. And yeah, that's that. So he like deduces, oh, that's a nice word, he deduces that she is like nervous, right? So she's nervous, and like he's gonna like put her at ease. So I had a different lip that I was gonna use, and then I don't know what I did with it. Oh, here it is. Okay. So he's gonna like put her nerves at ease. How did I get lipstick on my tooth like that? Okay. So he's like gonna put her at ease, you know what I mean? And so they they're doing it. They do it. And then she looks up at him when he's done. And she says, "Are you done yet?" I'm not lying. That's literally in the book. It's in the book. I didn't make that up. Oh, I laughed so hard at that. And so, anyhow, that's that. Okay, so now, like, the book kind of, like, jumps, a bit. And now they've been married for, like, a couple weeks, and everything is going just fine. Anthony is still in denial that he loves her. But, like, they're getting along, fine and everything. And her younger sister meets somebody, and they're kind of, they're, kind of dating or whatever. And Anthony even, like, sets up a dowry because, like, the sisters didn't have a dowry, right? So he's, like, gonna set up a dowry for the younger sister, and she, like, thinks that's so sweet. And everything's going well. And then one night, there is a thunderstorm. And, she has this, like, PTSD thing about thunderstorms. So, like, she's in bed, she's sleeping, but he's, like, awake, and he's, like, something's about to pop off. He knows, like, the thunder's going, like, it's not going to be long before, like, all hell breaks loose, right? And so he's, like, watching her, like, and, like, how she's, like, reacting and stuff like that. And she's, like, still sleeping, but she's, like, kind of, like, a little bit awake. Like, she's reacting to the lightning, but she's obviously in sleep. And she's, like, crying out, for her mom, but not, like, Mary. She always calls Mary, her stepmom, but she never calls her, like, mom or anything. But she's, like, crying out for, like, mom, So he's, like, what's really going on here? So the next day, he tells her what happened and stuff like that. And then they decide to go to Mary and kind of, like, see, like, what's going on with that. So they go to Mary, and Mary says, well, actually, like, when you were little, your mom died, and you saw it happen, and there just happened to be, like, a thunderstorm, and it was like, it was like she died, like, right when the thunder hit, and you, like, were traumatized, PTSD. And so, even though Kate didn't remember all this happening, she kind of just felt like, okay, like, she had her answers, and she felt better about it, and she thought, like, she could probably, like, get over it now. And so Anthony is, like, kind of, like, jealous that she's able to, like, deal with that trauma, because he hasn't ever been able to deal with the trauma of, like, his dad, right? But, like, he like, is jealous a little bit, but, like, also, like, proud, like, you go, girl. And so anyways, they do it, right? And then they're, like, laying there, and they're laying there afterwards, and, like, she, like, falls asleep. Like, she didn't fall asleep. Okay, she's just laying there, like, with her eyes closed, and he was, like, staring at her, but she knew he was staring at her, I guarantee you, okay, because that's how women do. Okay, so she's, like, fall asleep, she, like, has fallen asleep, and he is, like, just, like, looking at her, and then all of a sudden he just freaks out, and he gets up, and of course she wakes up, because she probably really wasn't sleeping in the first place. And she's like, where are you going? And he's like, I gotta get out of here. And she's like, what the hell? And so he leaves, and then she, like, goes out the window to, like, I don't know, look at the sky or something, because it's, like, maybe going to rain, and she's just, like, he's leaving her in this moment of need, but she kind of wants it to rain, because, like, she wants to see, like, if she can, like, overcome it or whatever. But he's, like, he just, like, took off, and he's outside staring at her, staring at the sky, and it's, like, kind of creepy, but whatever. And then he goes to his, like, house in, like, the house in London, right? With the families. And then Eloise sees him, because she's a sneaky little bugger, and she sees him, and she sends a letter to Kate the next morning saying, hey, just so you know, Anthony is here, and, you know, I thought maybe you'd want to know that, because, like, nobody else knows he's here, and he hasn't, like, announced that he was here, and, like, I feel like he's hiding something. And so Kate comes to, like, Anthony's, you know, the parents' house, and then she, like, tries to, like, talk to him, like, hey, what's going on? And then he, like, yells at her. This all happened because, like, he finally realized that, like, he loves her, but, like, so his reaction was that he wanted to, like, push her away more, because, you know, he had a realization when he was staring at her, like, sleeping, you know, that, like, she was, like, such a strong woman, and, like, you know, she could, you know, overcome, you know, these things that he couldn't, but, like, he loved her for it, but, like, he also was, like, really jealous, you know, so that's why he was, like, trying to push her away. So she comes. Right, I forgot that part. Okay, this is why I'm terrible at telling stories. So anyways, she comes to be like, what's up? Like, because he didn't say anything. He just, like, got up and was like, I gotta get out of here, and, like, put his pants on and, like, ran out the door, you know? And, so anywho, he yells at her, and she's like, you know, I'm not even gonna deal with this. I'm just leaving. And so she leaves. And so then he, like, just keeps doing that for, like, a week or something. And he's, like, going to the club every night, and, like, sitting with his brothers or whatever. And then his brother was like, hey, why don't you just go tell her you love her? And then he was like, hey, that's, like, a really great idea. I'm gonna go do that. So that's what he does. So he's, like, frantically, now he has to tell her right this second that he loves her, because he, like, knew he loved her, but, like, you know, he wanted to push her away. But then his brother was like, hey, why don't you tell her? And then he was like, hey, great idea. And, like, literally that's how it happened. Okay, so he is running to the house, okay, to try to go tell her that, like, he loves her, and, like, whatever. And so he gets there, she's not there. She's at the park with her sister, and her sister's, like, new, like, boo thing, right? So he gets on a horse and he goes to the park because he has to find her and tell her, like, right this second, so urgent. And he just happens to, like, get to the park right as the dog spooks the horse that the dog spooks the horse of the carriage that she is in, and, like, the carriage just takes off and, like, you know, bumping all over the place, and then falls over. And so he, like, is on his horse and he sees it all happening, and, like, runs and he's like, don't die, you know. And I love you, you know. And he's trying to get her out of, like, the wreckage. It's, like, really weird because I could not picture in the book, like, how the wreckage actually happened, or how it, like what had happened, because, like, the way they made it sound like it's a carriage. It's, like, only so big, you know what I mean? It's, like, tiny little thing. And I feel like you wouldn't really have to, like, do so much to get to somebody who's inside of the carriage, you know what I mean? But it was, like, real drawn out. Okay, anywho, he's, like, pulling the boards off, and he's like, this wasn't supposed to happen to you, you know, like, dramatic. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, what's going on? What's not supposed to happen to me? And anyway, she broke her leg. They get her out. She's in bed, you know, later on at the house. And he's like, and she's like, what were you talking about? Like, what wasn't supposed to happen to me? And she's like, you know, asking him questions, and he finally decides that he's going to tell her. And so he tells her about, like, this idea that he has that he's going to die super young because his dad died young, and his dad was, like, you know, a superhero to him. And so, like, he doesn't see how he could possibly, like, outlive his father, you know, whatever. And so she's like, you know, that's stupid. And then he's like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And that's the end. Hey, so thanks for making it all the way to the end. I did want to just kind of go over. Yeah, I do recommend this book. It was a really good book. I really enjoyed reading it, as well as all the other Bridgerton books. I do kind of tell the story in a minimalistic way to, like, give some humor to it. And if you guys have any comments or anything like that, please drop them down below. Please like, comment, and share if you can. And thank you so much for your time.